My name is Nestor Matthews, and I'm a psychology professor here at Denison University. I'm happy to welcome you to Blowing Off Steam. STEAM is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Blowing Off Steam is a collaboration among 3 educational institutions: the Granville Public Library, the Ohio State University at Newark, and Denison University. My co-organizers are on the Blowing Off Steam series. With me tonight is Lucy Chin Parker from the Granville Public Library. And another co-organizer is Professor Mike Stamatikos from the Department of Physics at OSU Newark. Mike was not able to join us tonight. Tonight's main event will be with Bettman Halpin, and it's my great pleasure to welcome tonight's guests, Stephanie Bettman and Luke Halpin, of the musical duo Bettman and Halpin, coming to us tonight live from Colorado, Denver, Colorado, through the miracle of Zoom. Bettman and Halpin play original folk music, touring together since 2008, and congratulations on 15 years of touring together, effectively this year. Yeah, hard to believe. Bettman and Halpin have been recognized in various regional and national competitions, including first prize winners in the 2021 USA Songwriters Competition in the folk category, grand prize winners in the Southern California Live Acoustic Music Competition, and most wanted artists at the Falcon Ridge Folk Festival. Their 5 CDs have reached the top 10 and top 5 on the National Folk DJ chart, and #1 on the Roots Music Report. Stephanie and Luke, welcome to Blowing Off Steam.
Thank you, Nestor.
So glad that
Happy to be here.
Oh, good. I'm so glad that you're here. So just to get us started, I wonder if we might invite each of you to take a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about your individual backgrounds regarding the performing art, instrumental music, vocal music, or any other performing arts that you might do.
I guess I'll go first.
Sure.
Hey, everybody, I'm Stephanie Bettman, and I started performing very, very young. Apparently, the story goes, I was 3 years old, and my parents used to let me stay up late if Baryshnikov was on great performances. And I was sitting there watching him one night, and I just pointed to the screen and I said, I want to do that. So my parents, being obliging and supportive, enrolled me in dance classes at the age of 3. So that was my first love, dancing. I did ballet and tap and gymnastics. And then around the age of 8, my brother was going to go to music camp in the summertime, and I was jealous. So I said, well, I want to go to music camp. So there was a quick conversation amongst myself and my parents, and they said, well, if you go to music camp, you have to play an instrument. So it sounded like the violin had a lot of good music written for it. So I thought, well, I'll play that. And it's not, ridiculously large to carry around like the cello, and it's not stupidly small like a, piccolo. So that was how I made that decision. And at a certain point, I gave up dance for music. And then I started singing when I was 13. And started studying singing, and actually that's what I ended up getting my degree in college, and somewhere along the way I fell in love with acting. So I tried all of them, all of the performing arts. I did them all. I fell in love with all of them. I guess I started acting when I was in 8th grade, and I was very determined that that was going to be the one. And I finally gave up that particular dogged, I'm going to get there point of view for acting around the age of 35, when I finally put music first and started doing music full time. And I started a band. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and about a year into having started that band, and going through a lot of different local players, and just starting to learn how to translate from, I'd played classical violin to starting to try to figure out how to fiddle. Then I fired everybody, and I started looking for new musicians. And then this guy was recommended to me by a guy that was playing the guitar for me at the time. And so I brought Luke on, and he was playing mandolin for me. And that's how we started to get to know each other. And that's my story.
That's pretty
all
quick.
of them, all of the performing arts.
That was a really quick
I love them all.
synopsis.
Yep.
That's great. Well, some
I
of our
left out
listeners.
Ariel. I did do circus arts for a little while in LA.
Oh, by the way.
Another
By the
performing
way.
art. Right.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's germane to what we might show a little later on today when
Yes,
we
it
get to some
is.
of the videos. So thank you for that.
A little, what do they call it? Easter egg?
Yeah.
And one other fun tidbit in that, as you are describing your college career, so many of the people that watch this will have a Denison University affiliation, and they will be very much aware of some of the colleges that are in our consortium, which do include Oberlin College, which is your alma mater.
Yes.
So, okay, very good, very good. Okay, I wonder if we might hear from Luke.
Yeah, sure. It's so funny. Stephanie and I have entirely different paths, but we started at the exact same age. Well, she started at 3, but as far as the music thing goes, we both started at 8. And I was the youngest in a family band when I was 8 years old. I don't know this full story, but the rumor has it is my dad was no longer allowed to go out and play in bars with bands. So he needed a band. So he got his kids to all learn how to play music so that we could be his band. So when I was 8, he handed me a mandolin and a Mel Bay beginner mandolin book and said, here it is, learn how to play it. You're in my band. So that's where I started there. And then, so it was me, my brother and my sister and my mom and my dad, kind of bluegrass instrumentation, though we weren't necessarily a bluegrass band. So there was fiddles and mandolins and banjos and guitar all over the house. So over the years, I picked up fiddle, probably around 9 or probably 10. I started playing the fiddle. I took a few lessons here and there, but I just hated lessons because they made me so nervous. So I just went to a music store and just bought myself a bunch of books and taught myself how to play everything and bought cassette tapes and all these things of, Byron Berline's Learn How to Play the Fiddle book. And so over the years, I actually managed to, I still played with my parents into my 20s. I was also playing in other bands by then, but I still was like supporting them a little bit as a little trio for a little while. And then I as a fiddle player in LA, there's not a lot of that going on. There's a few, but not a lot. So I had plenty of work in country bands and stuff. And then inevitably, I knew enough players that when she started, everyone she played with, I knew. So eventually we run into each other, and I actually hadn't played very much guitar. I owned a guitar and I could fool you pretty good on the guitar, but I didn't think of myself as a guitar player. But when I met her and we started working together a lot, particularly on like our harmonies and working that out, I would grab a guitar and we would start working it out. And I'm not saying I'm the reason that everyone in the band got fired, but maybe. A little bit. So I ended up really taking on the guitar about 15 years ago. So added that to the arsenal of legitimacy. That's it. I've never danced. Well, I did learn how to salsa dance, but just socially. And I've never done trapeze, and I've never acted. Well, I did. Actually, I made a movie when I was 14. I forgot about that. Yeah, but my professional career is just music. Fiddle, mandolin, guitars, banjos, that sort of stuff.
And I didn't realize that guitar made a comparatively later entrance. Maybe you had access to one, but
yeah,
you didn't really identify as a guitarist until—
Not at all. A few years ago, I finally had to admit that I was a guitar player. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I had to record. By the time I decided to focus on the guitar, I had a pretty good mastery of the mandolin. So all it really took was just focus and attention. I mean, I knew how to move my fingers and everything. It's a totally different animal though,
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes our early instrumentations give us a really strong identity. I've been playing guitar for many more years than I played drums, but I played drums first. So it took me forever to come to the realization that maybe I'm also a guitarist. I hadn't.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I get that. In my head, I'm a mandolin player. Yeah.
Real good. So thank you both for those backgrounds. Interesting that they started at the same time and they are very different paths from each other. I wonder if you might share with our audience some of the artists, the musical artists that inspired you at a young age, or maybe even continue to inspire you.
Well, the musical artists, I grew up listening to classical music when I was young, because that's what my parents played in the house. I used to dance around the living room to Coppelia, the ballet, and and they used to have these like old 45s that I would play, these old 45, records. And I remember some like tunes. I don't remember too many of the artists, but then I was sort of like just classical and sort of like I was out of the loop of all of my friends. I remember being in middle school and I would go to the school dance and all my friends knew all the songs they were playing and I didn't know any of them, because I wasn't listening to popular radio. I wasn't listening to rock and all those things. So I started to catch up in high school when I started driving, and then I was listening to the radio. And I remember, well, Barbra Streisand was huge for me when I was a kid. I went through a whole phase where I listened to everything she ever did, all of her movies, all of her records. And then, and I was just like, oh, I was so amazed by Barbra Streisand. And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, I've had enough now. I'm Barbra Streisand out. And then I was done. And I moved on. And the next one I remember is Billy Joel. Billy Joel.
Wow, that's a big jump.
Yeah. Billy Joel was big for a while for me, like right at the end of high school, going into college. This neighbor friend of mine made me a mixtapes back when people made mixtapes. And I loved that. And I had all these, like, of course, the hits, but also some B-sides that ended up being my favorites. And, I mean, what a tremendous singer and a songwriter, and just amazing. And then when I got into college, of course, I was in college for classical music. So I was learning a lot of classical, and I was, studying voice, and I was doing theater. And we did this play, and I helped stage manage this play, which is a Sam Shepard play. It's called Cowboy Mouth. And the soundtrack that's recommended in the script is a bunch of Hank Williams, classic Hank Williams tunes. And so being involved with that play introduced me to classic country, and I fell in love with it. And it was at that point that I really started to love old country music, classic country music. And I started to then I discovered the Cowboy Junkies. And then I remember I had this little apartment that I was living in when I was like a junior and a senior at Oberlin. And I wasn't like particularly happy at Oberlin. I think partly it was because I think I had seasonal affective disorder, and I didn't even know it, because it's cloudy there a lot. And I grew up in sunny New Mexico. And so I was used to sun, 365 days a year. And there wasn't any from like October until April. So I wasn't happy there. But I remember I was sitting in my little apartment, and I had this candle lit, and I was listening to the Cowboy Junkies, and I was thinking, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I don't want to sing in French. I don't want to sing in Italian and nobody can understand me. I don't want to sing the flowers, the flowers, the flowers. Oh, the flowers, like 100 times in Italian. I was like, I want to talk to people. I want people to get what I'm saying. So that was kind of the first, I think, that was the first inkling I had of what I really wanted to be doing. And then that sort of resurged after I got very sidetracked with acting. And at a certain point, the acting path was just, so I've totally lost track of your question, which was about influences, but I guess
you're doing just fine on influence. So we started with Barbra Streisand, we made it to Billy Joel. Then you were in college, you were already
right, the Cowboy Junkies. Hank Williams. I skipped over Queen. They were big at a certain point.
Wow.
And Ella Fitzgerald actually too. Ella Fitzgerald just sort of woven throughout probably college, high school, marvelous. I mean, what can you say? Ella Fitzgerald, she's the queen. So that was like, that's my influences. I'm influenced by so many people. But I would say those were some turning point influences, definitely.
Excellent.
And then right now, I'm like totally into, I don't know.
You're totally into the Imagine Dragons.
Imagine Dragons. I'm really digging on them.
That's what you're totally into right now.
Yeah.
Let's just say it out loud.
Yeah, there was I'm forgetting everybody now. Oh, well, Brandi Carlile. She's pretty cool. Yeah. So anyway, I'm always being influenced.
And congratulations to Bonnie Raitt for the Grammy.
Oh my gosh, what a song. Holy moly. Yeah. Wow. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so just before we transition to Luke, I just wanted to say that I think my students will get a kick out of the reference to Queen. So on Thursday, we'll be back in class again with the psychology of music. And our topic is going to be the perception of rhythm. And some of the students who are speaking that day they've already put together their PowerPoint. And one of their examples of basic rhythm is "We Will Rock You"
Oh,
by
cool.
Queen. And it's interesting to me that the contemporary students who are still 18 to 22 would be aware of that reference from, I think, the early 1980s, but they know all about it. So something timeless to some of the influences that you've had, Stephanie.
Oh, yeah. And what's old is new again, you know, like one of my best friends, he listens to nothing but 70s like pop rock or folk rock. That's like his favorite thing. Crosby, Stills and Nash. They're his jam. So, and he wasn't even born, not even a glimmer.
That's true.
He was not around when they were doing their thing. So,
Luke, what about you? Some of your influences?
My influences early on are probably going to be a little more obscure, just because being a player of all the bluegrass instruments, maybe not obscure, but like the Dillards were like a great bluegrass band, and then Newgrass Revival, which a lot of people don't know the name Newgrass Revival, but they'll know Bela Fleck. He was in that band, and Sam Bush was in that band, and Pat Flynn and John Cohen, and they're just amazing. And as a kid, playing two of those instruments really well, and then dabbling on guitar and banjo and stuff, it was always just thrilling for me to listen to bluegrass because I felt like I understood all the elements. So that was huge. And then there was also a huge influence of Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson in the house, just because my dad thought Merle Haggard was the king. So that's still a part of my daily listening ritual, is some Willie and some Merle. So that's real. And I grew up pretty in a bubble. I was homeschooled and like came from a super religious family. So we honestly I wasn't even allowed to really listen to the radio. I'd been playing the mandolin for 8 years before I ever heard one played. So that's sort of a funny little factoid. And there were only like 3 records in the house. One of them was a Randy Travis record, a Merle Haggard record, and I can't remember, maybe the Jungle Book soundtrack. I don't remember exactly, something like that. And but then once I got to college, I heard Guns N' Roses, and that sort of changed things a little bit for me. Like, oh, there's a whole other thing out there. And it's not so much that I have nostalgia for Guns N' Roses because it was really effective at the time. But it was really just more of an eye opener, like, oh, there's other things happening. And sometimes I feel a little like out of touch with most people because I grew up not listening to music. So I don't have a lot of the same references. In recent years, let's see. Oh, I'm in love with Chris Stapleton right now. Like, he's absolutely incredible. And then I've become like, studio music producing / mixing guy over the last few years. And I love listening to like the mixes of like the Bruno Mars records and all these sorts of things. So there's a part of me that's kind of falling in love with pop music right now. It's sort of weird, but I appreciate the technical side of what they're doing. It's not my favorite music for like the feelings I want, but I love what I think they make you dance, and they're the tones. I don't know. That's sort of an obsession, but that's more about the technical side from a recording engineer standpoint. I think well, it's interesting that I always want to bring it up because Stephanie was such a dancer person. Like, I've never really danced, but I was in love with Gene Kelly as a kid, like so much. So I always wanted to be a dancer, but I never got an opportunity to dance. Maybe when I'm 50, I'll start tap dancing or something.
Very good. Very good. Wow, what a mixture of influences across the two of you. Really interesting. Fun reference to Chris Stapleton. Yep. So we played some of his music. We played a video today in Cycle Music from his performance at the Super Bowl. And we also played a version of Lift Every Voice. We talked about that, just how different those styles were, but how moving they all are. So it's great to hear your variety of influences. And that probably led in part to some of the creativity that we see coming out of Bettman and Halpin. So you've already alluded to how you came together in Southern California, I think, is where we met. So my next question was going to be about the formation of Bettman and Halpin, but we've kind of already got there, I think.
Yeah, I touched on it in my long and rambling something.
I was a referral.
He was a referral.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so here we are then. Maybe we'll get towards some of the videos. And the first video that we're going to be talking about tonight is titled When We're Together. It's actually the more recent of the two that we'll be chatting about tonight. And I wonder if you might set us up a little bit with what the motivation was for, I think the song was first and then you turned it into a video.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering about that sequence. I wonder if you want to tell us about how this particular video came together.
Well, when I wrote the song, I just always imagined Fred and Ginger dancing to it. It just felt like that to me. And so that seed was planted when I wrote the song, and and Luke and I actually played the song for a little while before we finally, committed to working on the American Songbook CD that we just released last June. And so when we were really getting close to having the CD, like in focus, and we were like, okay, here's our target, and we're going to be releasing it in June. Then I started thinking seriously about wanting to make them. I've been wanting to make music videos for years and years. I mean, it sort of brings all of my loves together, the acting, I did dabble with filmmaking when I lived in LA, and the dance and the music and just like all of the things that I love, it just brings them together in one cohesive, yummy package. So I had been wanting to do it, and I'd been kind of testing waters, and I had tried to make a music video first with our song A Million Hearts. And I did eventually make a music video with that through hiring people online to kind of do illustrations, which turned out being kind of cool. But so this one, I had this ambitious idea. I wanted a Fred and Ginger style video, and I wanted to dance because I love dance and I hadn't done it since forever. And although Luke and I actually did both learn salsa dancing, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years ago. But so I started putting out feelers of people that might be able to help me make it happen. And, one person came on board, and she was great in that she was helping me kind of get focused and just get things moving. And then I just started putting out more feelers to anybody I knew, because I had no idea how to get somebody to choreograph this video. I wanted a dance video. I didn't know any dancers in town. I didn't know any choreographers in town. So I just started pinging everybody I did know. I knew this one woman who had danced salsa with me for a little while. We'd both been training at the same time. And I remembered that she was a ballroom dancer. And she and I were about the same size. We're both 5'8", both sort of tall and long and lanky. And she had said to me randomly at a class one time, if you ever need a dance dress, I have a ton of them. And so this was starting to, come into my mind. And I thought, well, maybe she knows somebody. So I reached out to her, and I reached out to every theater person I know in the area. And, I was talking to like 4 different people, and everybody was like, oh yeah, it sounds great. Oh, it's cool. I'd love to be involved. But then the ball would kind of drop. Well, she followed through, and she recommended somebody that she works with she's a professional ballroom dancer, and she works with somebody in that world who she recommended, and he actually followed through, and we ended up meeting. And then, through talking with him and talking about things, he and I were having a conversation, and he said, you really want somebody, he was about my height. He said, you really want somebody taller than you for the video? And I said, yeah, probably that'd be ideal. So he recommended me to a friend of his who was another professional ballroom dancer. And then that guy and I started dancing together and practicing, and he started choreographing the song. One thing led to another. The woman who had originally come on board to kind of direct, she
quit.
She was a photographer.
Put it mildly, she quit.
She quit. She quit
Randomly.
I think she got in a little over her head and just kind of realized that,
it was a huge bump in the road, though. It was pretty far. The project was pretty far along for someone just to fail like that.
We were basically a week out from shooting.
Yeah.
And she quit. And then when she quit, the guy who was going to shoot it also quit. So that was a big okay, now what? And as luck would have it, the guy who was working with me on ballroom had also made music videos, was also a musician of totally different genres. And so he said, well, I'll help you make it. And so we kind of, backtracked, talked about, all right, well, what's it going to be? Now it's just you and I making it. So we want it to be all about the dance, which is what I had wanted originally. And so one thing led to another. We ended up choreographing. Well, we intended to choreograph the whole song, but we ended up choreographing really just the sort of instrumental in the middle, and then the the second half. Well, we had little pieces earlier, but yeah, so he had some people who had done, videography. So he connected me with them, and we found a space locally, and we set it up, and we ended up pushing it out about a month to a month and a half later than the original scheduled shoot. But then we shot it in one day, hired makeup and hair, and, had costuming help, and my ballroom dance friend who had said, hey, if you ever need to borrow a dress, I was like, hey, I need to borrow a dress. So, and so we've shot it. It was a 10-hour day. And, we came up with, I came up with shot lists and things. And, so we had a guideline, and we had an idea. And then it really came together in the editing, which happened a few months down the road. The guy who shot it, he compiled all the video. He did a first rough edit based on what the conversation had been around the story. And then I looked at it, and I thought, it needs to be better. So I went in and I scheduled a day with him, and we sat in his editing studio together. And I don't know that he loved that. I think it made him a little squirrely, a little uncomfortable to have me sitting there going, yeah, no, let's do something different here. What do you have? But he got through the bumps of like, who's this lady I barely know telling me what to do? And ultimately, we ended up with a product that I'm super proud of. I think it turned out great. And I'm glad that, all the bumps in the road ended up being learning lessons for me. And not the least of which was like, standing up for my own desire to, okay, I really want to be in the room with you in the editing bay, and let's do this together, because I have a feeling about what I want, and I don't want to just give you notes. I want to be there. I want to see the shots. I want to help you put it together. And that was uncomfortable for him. It was uncomfortable for me to be like, bossy. But it worked out.
It was ultimately so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find it remarkable that it was shot in just one day. It seems like that's a rarity contemporarily, that it would be shot that quickly. But
well, music videos are pretty short, so ultimately you're only looking for, I think that one's 4 minutes and 20 seconds, which is long, actually.
Well, and it also happens in only one location, so that helped too.
Okay.
Yeah, we managed to find a location that we could use different pieces and parts of that location and just basically only have one setup, thankfully. Plus, it was a budget, it was very much a budget shoot, so we were definitely looking to do it as cheaply as we could.
Okay, so let's go to the video. So we're talking about this being about 4 minutes and 20 seconds or so. I'm going to attempt to turn this on, and I'll ask Stephanie and Luke and Lucy and Karen to give me thumbs up if you can see and hear this. It'll ooze on. Here we go.
People always tell me out of sight, out of mind. That sentiment has always made me ponder. While you're away, I think of you, and I always find that absence seems to make the heart grow fonder. You're in my heart, you're in my mind. Love doesn't fade, no matter how much time I think of you. I always do, I dream of you. It sees me through until the day when we're together. Years go by and life goes on, we reap what we sow, and everyone has felt some joy and sadness. Some people stay inside your heart, and you'll always know the kind of love that brings you lasting gladness. You're in my heart, you're in my mind. Love doesn't fade, no matter how much through until the day,
that marvelous day.
when we're together. Until that day,
That marvelous day.
when we're
Yeah, just fantastic. So glad to have that. So, I mean, bring this back. Okay, so When We Were Together by Bettman Halpin, just wonderful. I always enjoy the video. Such a treat. So many questions to ask. First, I always tell my students when they've got a writing project going on or they're doing an oral presentation, there is what we might call the product, and that might be their final paper, or that might be their oral presentation. And in this case, the final product was the video, but there's this process. So you've already reflected a bit on the process, but I wonder, earlier you were talking about what it was like going into it. Now I wonder, looking back on either the product or process, do you have any reflections on this that you want to share with us?
Well, I guess I'll say that, in any creative endeavor, you start out with a vision and a hope. You have this idea of something you want to make, and you don't know really how it's going to go or how it's going to come together or if it's going to come together. And you just keep taking the next step, and you keep taking the next step. And I was determined to make this happen. And like I referenced, there were some bumps along the way. There were more bumps than are really worth talking about. But ultimately, I'm so glad that I did make it happen. And it's I learned a lot doing it. I learned a lot about just simple persistence, faith in forces outside myself, and also faith in myself, and there were times when I didn't stand up for myself and maybe should have. And there were times when I did stand up for myself, and I'm really glad I did. And so, yeah, I mean, reflecting on it, I love it. I love that I made it happen. I love that song. We love singing that song, and people have responded so positively to the video. And, there was a lot about even the story of the video, that we had ideas, we had a plan when we went into the shoot day. But ultimately, it was in the editing room where it came into cohesion, and it was like, okay, this is, the general, I don't know if anybody actually even gets the whole context that we really were working with. I mean, let me ask you guys, like, what do you think is going on in that video? What did you get from it? Nestor, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought Karen was reaching to open up her microphone, which she's welcome to do. But first, a couple of things. I've seen the video many times, and for the viewers' context, I am a big fan of Bettman and Halpin. I was watching several of their Facebook concerts. So when we all got shut down for COVID, they would perform these concerts from their living room in Denver. And there was, I think it might have been shortly after you got back on stage somewhere, you began playing the song, and it was such a treat. So I knew something about the song before I saw the video, right? So many of our viewers will be hearing the song and the video for the first time together, but I had some background knowledge about the song. So I always thought it was just about a couple. And looking at the imagery, I think it's very romantic. I didn't even recognize until just a minute ago that Luke is one of the bartenders.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then later on, there's a different bartender. Yeah, right.
There's a different one. Yeah.
And so
I
now I have to
was
look
busy at that second half of the day.
So that was one of my main takeaways from this most recent viewing. It's fun to rewatch a video many times and pick up on lots of things. But of course, at the end of the video, when you're passing each other going down the stairway where you were earlier in the video, right? There is just this passing glance, and then the glance is kind of protracted, and then you go your separate ways. And Stephanie really goes her separate way, and the gentleman coming up the stairs thinks and thinks again, and then heads on out. And just really fun to end the video that way. And for those of us that enjoy music, I think the opening and the ending guitar riffs are very similar.
They're the same.
They're okay, and they sound
They're
like
identical. They should be identical
They
anyway.
should be identical. Okay, and they sound to me like they might be major sixth chords, but I don't know if there's a sixth in there or not.
Possible. It's possible.
that's
I'm not a
what I
real
got.
jazz guy. I just sort of like found a lick that sounded cool and then sort of built it out of that, and never intended to play chords underneath it. It was just lives on its own.
Did any either of the others of you, Karen, or I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your name. Lucy. I'm curious if anybody picked up on the story that we were telling. There's a little bit of a subtlety, but it's in the visuals that we've sort of tried to delineate. There's something going on with time.
I almost feel like, sorry, I jumped in there, that the actual dancing sequence and the sort of the little rendezvous in the hallway and the stairwell was almost like either of memory or of imagination. And then at the end, you sort of meet each other again, either obviously, and I don't know, have that connection, obviously.
Nice. Yeah. Karen, what did you think?
It almost seemed like in the ballroom that you sort of randomly ran into each other and started dancing. And then later when you passed in the stairwell, it's like, wait, that person? Wait, maybe I want to try and continue that dance that just sort of happened.
Cool. I like
Yeah.
that interpretation.
Yeah. So what we were working with, and of course it doesn't matter because the only thing that matters is what whomever is watching it gets. And that's the wonderful thing about art. But we were working with different lifetimes. So all of the black and white and the black dress and the suit and the dancing and that whole romantic interlude is supposed to be a different lifetime from when we meet in the stairway at the end and we don't know each other, but there's something. So that's what we intended. And I don't know if anybody really gets it, except I like it.
Also earlier, Nestor, or maybe I should call him Professor Matthews, if his class is going to be looking at this, was talking about the end product. And Stephanie, you mentioned that you didn't like the first version, so you revised it. And we work with our students to not just take the first product, but revise it and make it better, even if the first product maybe was decent, but you can revise it and make it better.
Yeah, actually, when I was saying, there were various trials where I either stood up for myself or I didn't. And that's one of the ones where I stood up for myself. And in the face of both the, collaborator, the ballroom guy, and the video guy were like, no, it's good. But I knew in my heart it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And so I made everybody awkward and slightly uncomfortable so that I could get it where I wanted it to be. And I'm not sorry,
In psychology, we often talk about something that we describe as a top-down process versus a bottom-up process. And a bottom-up process in our parlance in psychology means that it's driven by the stimulus. That is, you can almost imagine that you've got these little clips in front of you from the video, and you begin putting them together. And two artists could walk into identical rooms with identical clips, and they could begin to assemble from all this information, put something together. And once they get a little inclination about the way it's coming together, the ball starts rolling in that direction, right? We might call that a bottom-up process. A top-down process is one where you've got the vision, okay? And you know where you're going with this thing. And we think of this as being knowledge-driven. And you pick up a particular stimulus, a particular clip, and if it's not fitting the vision, then that clip is out. And then you go to the next clip, and if it doesn't fit that vision, it's out, right? So some people will talk about the sculptor who will start out with just a block and say, I've got a vision of David in there in that block, and I'm going to cut away everything that isn't David.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, although there might have been some, at some point you are bound to, you're constrained to working with what clips you have in front of you. There are times when you're saying, you know what, I've got this. It's not lining up with where I want to go with this. More of a top-down influence. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard that particular description, but that's truly valid. And both were at play here because we started really bottom up. We had a plan. We had the shots we had, and the videographer took all of the shots that he thought fit the original storyline that we came up with, and he put it together, and he put it together linearly the way it had sort of existed in the conversation. And then I came in, and it wasn't meeting, like, I feel like for me, it's like I knew in my heart that it could be something different. I didn't have necessarily such a clear vision that I was like, oh, this goes here and that goes there. No, but I knew certain things, like I knew I wanted it to be more about the dancing than what he had originally put together. And so when I sat with him, it was very much an instinctive process, just feeling it out, like, oh, this doesn't quite feel wrong. I feel like we need more dance here. What do we have? And then we'd go look at the clips. What do we have? Oh, that's good. Let's use that, or that's almost good. Can we slow it down? Can we stretch it out? Things like that came into the conversation, and then we got there,
Yeah.
So it's like top down, bottom up.
Yeah, right.
Kind of met.
Yeah, right. It's surprising that a lot of science gets done that way too. Some combination of those two. So yeah, really great. I'm looking at the clock and we're doing okay on time, but I would like to go to a second video so that we have a little bit of contrast here. And our second video is, interestingly, it was the one that was done first. So this was done, I think, roughly 2017. I might be off by a year or so there. This is called Flower and Stone. And I wonder if there's anything that you'd like to say to set it up, or maybe you just want to go straight to the video on this Flower and Stone video.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, I used to be an aerialist, into circus arts. And this song was inspired by a trip that we took. We were hired to play a show in a little town in Oklahoma, where there happened to be a circus cemetery. It was a section of this particular cemetery that was purchased and devoted purely to circus performers. And I found myself in that cemetery wandering around and looking at the pictures and the headstones and the carvings. And it was really quite an incredible place. It moved me. And that's what inspired the song. And then that year when we made this video, like I said, I had always been wanting to make music videos. And I, for a long time, couldn't quite figure out, I couldn't figure out how to do it myself. I knew I needed help. And this song just lended itself so well to images. And it was it was the same time that Ringling Brothers called it quits. And having been in the circus community, having previously in my life had been in the circus community and had a lot of friends in the circus community, that was big. And that was huge when Ringling Brothers called it quits. I mean, my gosh, so many decades. And so Luke and I had talked about it, and we talked about, turning that song into a video, and we were inspired by the end of Ringling Brothers. And so that's what led to the impetus to turn this song into a video. And this is one that Luke and I did together.
Okay, let's see if I can call this one up. Okay, so this is Flowers and Stone, Bettman Halpin, and here we go. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
Of a faraway calliope. magic is hanging in the air. With the catcher's release and a last rest in peace, the circus takes its final curtain there. Flowers and stone, you wandered alone. Love that was passing is now everlasting, eternally known. Flowers and stone, you're finally home. Through tears and through laughter, you're here ever after, no more to roam. If you go to Hugo, tell strong John I say hello. The flying Latinos are balanced evermore with no net below. There lies Louise of the swinging trapeze, famed for her triple to the bar. Now she's spinning the breeze as she hangs from her knees and circles a falling star. Flowers and stone, you're finally home. Through tears and through laughter, you're here ever after, no more to roam. Nothing left but empty popcorn sacks and wagon tracks. The circus is gone. Flowers and stone, you wandered alone. Love that was passing is now everlasting, eternally known. Flowers and stone, you're finally home. Through tears and through laughter, you're here ever after, no more to roam. Through tears and through laughter, you're here ever after, no more to
Okay. So Flowers and Stone. Wow.
I honestly hadn't seen that in a long time.
Yeah.
It was really cool to watch it.
Yeah, yeah, and so different from the other video.
Yeah.
It's funny
Yeah,
to me.
you know, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that as different as they are, they're both very strongly Bettman and Halpin. You know, it's a Bettman and Halpin tune. That's how I experienced it. And it's interesting to me that there can be that theme, there can be that distinctiveness that it's Bettman and Halpin, given how different the videos are.
It's cool. It's the common denominator is her singing, I think.
Well, but also just the combination between the two of us, the music that the instruments that we play, the musical aesthetic that we share. I think that informs, you know, sort of acoustic vibe in both of them.
So maybe for one final thread that we have, I'm looking at the clock, we still have a few minutes, but I'm wondering if you'd like to say anything about, now we've talked a lot about making these videos and what went into it, and some of the different angles on all of that. Then there comes a point in time when it's the moment when you've got to start promoting these things. So what's it like to promote a music video? What's that all about?
Well, that is an area where I could learn a lot more than I know, honestly. We didn't really promote Flowers and Stone. We just kind of released it into the world.
That one got a little lucky because,
because
the
the circus
community kind of found it and started spreading it around a little
globally,
bit, which was really cool.
Yeah.
We get a lot of comments from people like, my great-grandfather was the guy being shot out of the cannon.
Yeah, that's been amazing, actually,
so
through
cool.
Facebook. I don't know, we've got over 50,000 views on it. And we have had so many people in the circus community respond to it and say, oh yeah, that guy with that clown with the tear down, that's my great-grandfather, you know, like really cool things like that. And the circus community is such a unique and kind of tight-knit community, because it's a very specific thing to do, you know, and for a long time, you couldn't even get into the circus world unless you were kind of born into it, especially aerial arts.
Yes, I mean, that one was literally just put it out there, just put it on
put it in stream
Facebook and the YouTubes and let it do its thing. I mean, when we're together, the dance one, not that there was a grand scheme, but one of its roles was to also help promote the new record. So we released the single and the video at the same time. Like it says, in promotion of the record that was going to come out afterwards. So the video was kind of being more used as a promotional tool to raise some awareness about the record as well. And we did a bit of a Spotify campaign, you know, a pre-release campaign that went along with, and we'll be releasing the video as well. And you know, I have room to grow in terms of promoting videos and honestly everything. So there's a lot of things one can do, and I don't even know when it comes to the YouTube thing. I think there's a lot of things you can do that I don't even know. So, you know, maybe somebody watching this will know and tell me.
Well, that's great. I guess one other thing is that Bettman and Halpin are still very actively performing. So when you're out on a gig, you probably mentioned that you have these videos, and maybe others are forthcoming. And I'm sure that as you make your way around from gig to gig, you, from a bottom-up perspective, you develop a grassroots following for some of these also.
Sure.
So you can
Certainly, and of course, I would put it out. I put it out to the fan base, you know, when that sort of goes without saying that everything that we release into the world, I say, hey, everybody who already knows us, look what we did. Check it out. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely people definitely have gravitated to the Flowers and Stone video before even seeing us, because if you Google us, I think it's one of the things that comes up. So there's a few people that will show up who don't really know us very well, but they know that song because of that video. So that's always really cool.
Wow. Fascinating to think about how computer algorithms can sometimes determine how people find you, and how one of the videos might grow at a different rate than the others just because of some idiosyncrasy in the Google algorithm.
Yeah. You know, knowing how to work with those algorithms is a powerful tool, one that I would like to have in somebody else helping me.
We're just about out of time, and this has been so much fun, but I wonder if there's any final comments about making videos for our audience.
Plan, and then just do whatever you can on the day of. I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's kind of a saying that pre-production is the most important time in a video plan, because you have to you have to be prepared because you have limited time. You can usually only get however many hours you can get, and every added hour is more money. Whatever space you're using. I mean, assuming you're shooting live. I mean, the Flowers and Stone video is a different situation because we used footage of us performing that we already had, and then we used, found images. But shooting a live video, like when we're together, preparation is everything. So being as organized as you can be, knowing as clearly as you can, just like trying to guess what might come up, all the things we might want to make sure to have, just in case. Actually, Luke was so great on that shoot, just in terms of like the week of just being one of those supports who's like, hey, what about set dressing? Hey, what about, props for this particular shot that we're going to do? I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. And he was, I'll run out and get some stuff. So, it's for one thing, it's good to have a good team. But there's just so many details. So preparation.
And then nothing's going to go as planned.
Yeah. And then,
so then you got to be super flexible, but you also have to know what, like, I mean, I know she did everything. I was just observing, but there's but then you have to know what are the things we absolutely have to have, or this thing doesn't work at all. And what are the things we can actually pivot and do something different? Because there was a whole hour or two of shooting that never even made it into the video because it just didn't work when all said and done.
Yeah, we had done this whole thing with a smoke machine, and anyway,
and like we had all of our friends come and do like the
alarms
silhouette sort of thing, but it just never worked out. It just didn't look good on video.
Wow.
We had fire alarms going off. That's right.
Oh yeah, and like the dance, the choreo. So I had worked the choreography with the choreographer, that my dance partner in the video, and we had worked on it for months. And in the shooting of it, I had been sort of starting to feel this little bit of a pain, and we were doing this one lift, and we shot it twice, and I couldn't do it anymore because it was too painful, because whatever was going on with my rib and the way he was holding me. So then we had to, in the moment, just do a different lift. So, things like that, things happen, you work with it, and I have faith that, and maybe I'm just idealistic, but I have faith that it works out in the end. Sometimes magic happens because of a mistake, or because of, honestly, the lift that we ended up doing looked better on camera, the one that didn't hurt me. So yeah.
Wonderful. So many different influences here. We see the top down and the bottom up coming together, and the value of preparing. So Stephanie Bettman, Luke Halpin, thank you so much for joining us this evening and spending this hour with us on Blowing Off Steam.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Thanks to our viewers who'll be watching this in the future. And we wish you all the best, and we wish you a good evening.
Thank you.